Hi, in this video I want to talk about combo boxes, and specifically I want to talk about the property row source. Um, and the first thing that I want to talk about is that this video and the contents of this video only apply to the situation where the row source type is table/query for a specific combo box. So first you have to have the row source type for a particular combo box be table/query, and then the following information about row source will apply. Okay, if your row source type is like value list or anything like that, something else, then the information I'm about to say won't work. Okay, so what I want to talk about specifically is the drop-down list. Now, the row source is the drop-down list for a combo box. What you're doing is you're specifying what kind of list you want for your combo box. Okay, so there are two different sources that you can have for your row source. You can either have a row source list that comes from a table, or your list can be based on previously entered items in a form. And I will talk about what that is. Okay. And then under pulling a list from a table, you can either pull directly from a table, or you can pull from a query that you've already made in Query Design View, or you can build an SQL statement. Okay, so those are the three ways you can build for a table, whereas basing your list on previously entered items is a different process, and I'm going to demonstrate both of those in the video. And finally, the last topic that I want to talk about is your final project and how this information can be used and should be used for your final project. Okay. Here's a form that is from the rubric database. Okay. And here is a field when due. Basically, that's when a certain rubric point needs to be done for your final project. Anyway, and I would like to have it be a drop-down list. Or another way to put it is to change it to be a combo box that has a drop-down list. Okay, so I'm going to right-click and I'm going to say change to combo box. All right, so that's the first thing that I want to show you, is that now it's a combo box. It has this arrow here. Okay, and if I go over here to the data tab, it has a row source type of table/query, like I spoke about before, and the row source is blank. Okay, now remember, we have three different options here that we can place in this row source. We can place a name of a table, a name of a query that you've already built and is showing over here in the navigation pane, or I can go here and I can click here this build button and create an SQL statement. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and show you all three of those ways. Okay, so the when due um, drop-down list here that we want. Is a table to start, as I said. And so here is a table that has the options that I want for this particular item. So I'm going to use this table, okay? And the name of the table is TBL drop-down when due. So I can do several things, but one way is just to type it in here. TBL drop down, and it's just trying to guess when due, and it does. So another way to enter this row source is a query, as I said before. So instead of putting the table, I can type in a query name. Now I have created this query right over here, query drop down when due. Okay, so I can come over here and just enter the name of that query here. Okay, and now you have the row source set, query drop down when due. Okay, so that's another way that you can enter the row source. And then finally I can remove that and then come here to the build button and build an SQL statement. Okay, so I'm still going to use the TBL drop down when due table. Remember that everything that you enter in a query form report, well, not a query or a form, is held in a table. Everything, even though you see it differently, it ends up in a table, and that's where it's held. Okay, so and likewise, all of the information that will be displayed by the query previously would be held in the table but rearranged in the query. And then also with this SQL statement, it's going to pull from the table but rearrange all of the information how you want it to. Okay, so I'm just going to bring down all of the fields, and then I might sort them according to when due. Okay, and then if you want to see what it looks like, you can, before you actually exit here, you can run it, and then you can see what the outcome is like. And then you can click on Design View and save again and close. And now you'll see that there is an SQL statement here. Okay, so those are some ways that you can set the row source that come from directly, the data directly comes from a table. Okay. So the next thing that I want to tell you or talk about is a situation where you're basing your drop-down list for a combo box on previously entered information. And before I do that, I want to show you this form that I've got as it is, okay? And it has data entered in it, okay? And if I go from one record to another, you can see that there's data entered in it, okay? And then specifically, I want you to see this student city here, okay? And again, as I go from record to record, there's information that's already entered, right? Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to use this information that's already entered in these records, okay, for a drop-down list, okay? And that drop-down list will be for this city, okay? So now I'm in design view of this form, and I'm going to take this student city and a field, or stu city, and I am going to change it to a combo box. Okay, so now I'm going to build the list or the row source for this combo box. Okay, so I'm going to come here to the data tab, and here it is, row source. And once again, the row source type is table/query. Okay, so anyway, I am going to refer back to the student table or the record source for this form in order to build this row source. So in order to do that first, I'm going to show you the record source for this particular form, and that is TBL student. So if I go over here to TBL student and I open it up, I can see that there's all sorts of records. But if I go over here to the student city field, I can see all of the records that have, or all of the cities that have been entered. Okay. So I'm going to build a list now that is based on this TBL student table, which is also the record source for this form. Okay, and so for row source, I'm going to click on the build button. Okay, and then I'm going to choose TBL student, and I'll click on close. Now we only want the city for our list. We don't need all these fields. We just want the city, okay? And then I can click on sorting it, so it's in alphabetical order. Now, just to make sure that the list looks as we want it to, I'll click on run, okay? And as I was concerned about, we don't really have this list quite the way we want it because it's got all these duplicates in it. Here's a duplicate, here's some duplicates. Because more than one person, more than one student, record has been entered that they are living in, say, Broomfield, for example, or more than one student lives in Boulder. So we need to only have one for each list. You could leave it multiple, but it wouldn't be as user-friendly. Okay, so I'm going to click on this totals or the group by aggregate function, and then I'm going to run it again. And notice now we have unique values. Okay, so I'll go back over here, and I think that list looked as I wanted it to look. So I'm going to go ahead and save, and then I'm going to close. And now I have an SQL statement here, but the SQL statement is based on this TBL student table. And so anyway, so you're all pulling from previously entered cities, and that's, you don't have a separate table that's a drop-down list like I showed you over in the rubric database. Okay, so now if I go here and I go to view, I can see my list. Okay. Now there are a few things I want to make sure that you understand, and that is that we've just talked about the row source. Some things, some properties that are not the row source also affect the combo box. And you want to make sure that you're aware of the need to set those and what those settings should be. And that's in a different video. Now in that video, I will talk about the limit to list property, but I'm also going to talk about it here because I think it's important to understand that in the case where you are basing your list on previously entered data, as you are here, you want the limit to list to be no. And so why would you want that? Well, if you limit the list to only what's currently entered, and if you don't allow any new cities to be entered, then that's it. You're limited to those particular cities. But if you have a situation where you have more than those particular cities, which I would think that you would want to enter more than Arvada, Boulder, Broomfield, whatever else was on the list. It wasn't a comprehensive list. And so you would say limit to list being no. In the cases such as here, where we have a drop-down list that is based on a table, on table values that are separate from the records that are in the record source for the form, then I would say you would say limit to list being yes. You want it only for those particular items and nothing more. Okay. So what I just said about limit to list is not a hard and fast rule, but it's just a general guideline to help you know what you might want to consider for setting the limit to list property. Okay. So now let's go back to our outline here and look at your final project and how this information is reflected in your final project. You are required to have combo boxes with drop-down lists in them as part of your final project. And you can have either the list can either come from a table or it can be based on previously entered items in that particular form. Either way is fine. If you have a situation where you have a separate table that you're either pulling directly or indirectly from, you will need a form, a separate form for that table. If you're basing your list on previously entered items in that form, then you do not need a second form that will allow you to add items into your list. So quickly, I want to summarize, this video has been about the row source property for combo boxes. The information that is provided in this video pertains only to when this row source type is table/query. Okay, there are two different kinds of drop-down lists that you can provide for a combo box. The first pulls from a table, either directly or indirectly, and the second type of list is a drop-down list based on previously entered items. So for your final project, you only need a separate form if you have a separate table that you are basing your combo box on. Thanks.